Howdy, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here. Kathryn Whitaker is here today, and I share some stories of the craziest week of ministry that I've had in a very, very long time. We talk a little bit about how she prepares for some of her ministry events, and she also talks about the big week that she also had. She had a lot going on, including making hundreds of mums for kids going to the homecoming dance. We have a great conversation. She also has an important announcement to make towards the end. So if you enjoy this episode, make sure that you hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Enjoy. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Schroll. That is Kathryn Whitaker. Hello, Kathryn.
Howdy. It's good to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. I am going to start with a story of being at your parish on Friday. I thought I was going to randomly see you, and I did not. You must have been busy. Usually when I go to your church...
it was homecoming. That's why.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. So we'll get into some homecoming stuff too. We've both got stories today. We've got stories galore. Then we'll play a game and we'll go from there. So starting with a couple of things. Well, that was what typically in like a good TV show, they like show the person murdered, and then they're like, it like shows the title
4
card.
hours earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they eventually get there. That's what we're doing with that story. We're going to start at the beginning of the week. Beginning of the week was a Monday. So on a Monday, I'm sitting at my desk. I know I have work to do. Like I have like my desk work to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it's one of those weeks that I know I'm going to be out of town Friday because I was going to do an event all day at your parish. So I have to cram 5 days of desk work into 4 days, which is not out of the norm. It's not very difficult. Like I can make it happen. Essentially, if there's 3 podcasts to do on Friday, I do one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, and then have a beer on Thursday. Like we're all good, right?
Right.
Well, I'm sitting at my desk right here, working on stuff on Monday and rearranging everything so that I can get it all done Monday through Thursday. And then I get a phone call from our former associate pastor here, Father Will Rooney, who I think you know Father Will as well. Good old Aggie Catholic priest boy. So in the spring, he had asked me to come in and lead the retreat for his 8th graders at his new parish and school that he is now responsible for. And it went pretty well, where he was like, look, we'll call you again next year. I'm like, great. And I hadn't heard anything. I actually even sent him an email essentially this summer. I emailed everybody that I've done events for. Yeah, like, hey, remember me? You said you liked me. I just want to reach out and make sure that was really the case. You weren't just being nice. Right. If you would like for me to return, I would love to. So I sent that email, and he was like, yeah, that'd be great. And my assumption from when he read that email was he went and had a conversation with somebody at the school. And he was like, hey, You work at the school. You're in charge of the retreat. Can you book Taylor? Essentially just use the same contract, same agreement as last time. You book Taylor. And that was not communicated well or not received well. One of the two. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. But I did get a phone call last Monday from Father Will saying the story I just told you. And he said, yeah. I checked in with him today. We have a retreat Tuesday through Thursday out at the Diocese Austin Retreat Center. It's not officially owned by the diocese, but no, the other one,
Eagles Wings.
Yeah, the other one, the one that works for the diocese, but it isn't the diocese. Whatever, right?
Right.
Beautiful retreat center. I've actually hung out with you there too, and he says, "Well, we're having this retreat." And he was like, Tuesday through Thursday. I was like, next week? He's like, no, like tomorrow. Like tomorrow is the retreat, and Wednesday and Thursday. And I was like, well, I have this event on Friday, but like, I don't know. I could come on Tuesday and Wednesday, but I'm leading this apologetics course for my parish, and people are expecting me to be there. I made the commitment. I can't miss Wednesday night. He was like, well, you come lead the retreat Tuesday, all day Tuesday, stay Tuesday night, lead the retreat till Wednesday around 3:00, and then drive back, and our seminarian will take over the retreat, like Wednesday night through Thursday morning when they left or whatever. So that's what I did. I went to go be, it's one of these things where I have literally got a phone call last week for 2 events. One where I was meant to be booked and I just wasn't. So I got to come in and kind of play the savior, which was kind of fun. But then there was another one, and I've talked about this before, and it's this weird, like, kind of mix of I feel both honored and not honored at the same time.
Right.
This diocese that I've worked with in the past, they called me and they said, "Hey, the people that we actually wanted had to back out. The people
That
that we
always makes you
actually
feel good.
booked,
Yeah.
the people we
Wonderful.
actually booked, and we
Yeah.
know you're not busy. Would you like to come and be our backup?" And the answer is
Mm.
always yes, because there's a check involved, and I enjoy doing ministry. But the amount of times where I'm not somebody's first choice in both with events or podcasts or my wife when she was choosing a partner, like I'm not everybody's first
Stop.
choice, but it ends up working out. It was very funny.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's always a fun phone call to get. "Hey, this person that we asked, they canceled. So are you available?" And you're like, "Oh, so I was plan B. Good to know."
And if we're being honest, they probably called 3 other people before they called us, like
But you're the one that shows up. That's what matters, right?
Absolutely. I'm not the Catholic speaker who's the father. I'm the Catholic speaker father who stepped up.
It matters when you step up. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who they asked. You're the guy that's there.
I am the guy that's there, and no one else other than the 3 people that were trying to book someone else knows that. So the
Right?
kids are
Yeah,
all
exactly.
excited.
Nobody else knows. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But honestly, I've come around to it. The first 2 times I probably hurt my pride. And now I've been doing this long enough. I'm fat, I'm bald. Like I don't have much pride left. So now I just smile about it. I'm like, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to come do some ministry, and you're going to give me a check anyway. That's a great apology. Great apology to hand me a check. So
Right. And you're quite frankly probably the person that they needed the most anyway. So
well, that was always the
that's
case.
nice.
So I have a question for you in regards to how this retreat went, because I pretty typically I like to come across as a professional. Maybe not when I'm talking on this show, but when I'm doing my professional work, the editing and the speaking and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I like to come off as a professional, which one of the only ways that people can do that is one, seeing the fruits of your ministry. Jesus talks about that all the time. Like, do people tend to enjoy the podcast you work on? Do people tend to enjoy the events when you speak, lead worship? And I ruffle some feathers, but for the most part, the answer is yes, right? That's why people keep asking me to come. Great. But I think one of the reasons is that I'm professional. I come prepared. There's I loop people at these retreats. Typically there's other adults or teachers who are involved, and they prepare lesson plans every day. So I need to be prepared. So I always feel the need to here's the retreat schedule. Here's what we're doing. Here's your role as the other adults, all this kind of stuff. Well, I showed up on Tuesday after, instead of cramming 5 days of work into 4 days, I've now crammed most of it into Monday because I know Thursday is going to be a loss, So I get to the retreat, and I've worked with one of the guys who was leading this retreat before for the retreat that I planned really well, and it went really well in the spring. And he's like, "Do you have a schedule?" I was like, "No."
Why would I have a schedule? I literally just found out about this.
Right. And he was like, well, it was funny. He wasn't mad or anything, but he was like, "Well, didn't you have yesterday to prepare?" I was like, "I worked at my desk from when you called me until 8 p.m.
This isn't your only obligation, Taylor?
Right,
That's
yeah,
weird. Do you have other obligations?
I had to pick kids up from practice. That doesn't get canceled, so.
Right.
So we kind of chuckled through it, and then it kind of became our joke that I would sit with either next to him or across from him at every meal. And what we did was we planned the next block.
Thing.
So I came prepared with the intro block. Intro block for my retreats is usually pretty similar, so that wasn't very hard. And then he's like, "Well, what's next?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let's go have lunch." And then we went and had lunch, and we talked about, okay, here's the next block, here's the next block, and then we went to dinner. Here's the next block, here's the next block, and then by the time we all arrived for the morning, I had the morning block and then the lunch block, all this stuff, right? So my question for you, I've asked some other priests who have been on here, I've asked some other Catholic speakers, and yet you've been here for many years, and I've never asked you before. Which do you tend toward? Are you, when it comes to giving your talks, right? Are you writing up your notes, and are you following your notes, or are you I'm just going to think about it and go up there and wing it, or somewhere in between? Where are you at on that spectrum?
I'd say okay, so I'll preface it by saying I'm the daughter of a school teacher and an army man. and I'm super type A. So one would think that I have it planned out months in advance and all topped up. But I also have a background in like extemporaneous speaking. It's where I love in high school, they would give us a topic and then you would have to riff on it for a few minutes. So I think I'm a little bit of both, but I tend to be a little bit more led by the Holy Spirit. I think that's the former evangelical in me, is that I don't spend inordinate amount of time praying about what I'm going to speak about, but I spend a decent amount of time praying for the people that I'm going to witness to. So I always start with, if you know more about me and less about Jesus, I'm doing it wrong. So I think for me, I just own like what I'm good at speaking about, and it's not theology. I don't have a background in theology, but I'm a pretty decent storyteller. So my favorite speaking engagements are ones either that I get to MC at or that I have like a short speaking engagement or I have a chance to get to know the people that I'm speaking to before I actually get up on stage because that sort of dictates what I share and you kind of read the room. So I have a few stories that I tell and I'm like, okay, if they laugh, if this one resonates or if they laugh with this one, then I know that I can go a little bit deeper. But like if this one isn't hitting, then I'll rearrange the talk. So I do have notes. They're almost always handwritten and it's always 3 or 4 points. And I have certain stories that I know really illustrate certain points well. But as to when I tell those and how I tell those, and maybe the detail in which I tell them, or how I tie it back to scripture, depending upon the theme of the retreat or who the people are that I'm talking to. But I'd say I probably have 3 or 4 talks that I feel really good about, like, they're locked and loaded, I know what I'm gonna say, but because I never give the same talk twice, honestly, almost every talk I take something from this one and something from that one, and then I just am like, "Let's do this, Holy Spirit." And I've found, Taylor, that when I speak, if I think sometimes when we speak, we wanna impress people. And I found if I can get rid of that, Catherine, if I can just like close my eyes and say, okay, Holy Spirit, it's time for you to take over, it's so much better. So I know that there's some people that write out their talks and really pray with them, and that's a system that works for them. I've tried that, and those talks end up not going over very well. So I tend to fall a little bit more on the extemporaneous side and spend a lot more time praying for the people as opposed to the content. It seems to work. I mean, I'll be honest,
Yeah,
I
they keep
used to feel
calling you back
guilty.
too. So I mean, something's working.
Well, I used to feel guilty because I would see or be around other speakers and they like had pages of notes and they're like, I've been working on this for, weeks or praying about this. And I was like, maybe I'm not prayerfully entering into this the way that not only was I paid to, but maybe I was expected to. And then I realized if the if they've asked you, there's something about you that maybe that they're really drawn to because it's the way that the Holy Spirit works through you. And I was like, why am I fighting that? Like, why am I fighting my system? It's working. And just because it's different than someone else's doesn't mean that it's wrong. Like, I think it would be wrong to roll in and not prepare at all and have no prayer and just get up there and just say whatever you want. Like, I don't
Oh,
think
like I
that's
did on
effective.
Tuesday.
But you prayerfully entered into those lunches like, okay, where's the Holy Spirit calling us? What does he want us to speak about next? And I mean, there have been times, quite frankly, I was at a conference a few years ago in Louisiana and I had my talk all written. It was a breakout session. And I really felt called to talk about something else. And I asked the organizers, is it okay? And they said yes. And I'll never forget it. I had a 16-year-old boy who was one of like the videographers come up to me later and he's like, that was the best talk I've ever heard. And I was like, 0 credit to me. I was like, that was all truly the Holy Spirit. And I think that was a turning point for me to just trust my process and that's the way I do it and not to feel ashamed by that. So it's the way I work and it's worked out, I think, pretty well. I find myself to be less stressed and more present to the people that are in that particular room. And I love sharing the gospel with people. So it works, I think. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. People can
Yeah.
leave a comment and say, "Nope, that's a terrible system." But, I mean, I feel like the Holy Spirit and I are in a good groove. So, that's how I do it.
I follow your Instagram. I see you traveling all over the country to give talks. So it's working for somebody. So
Yeah, it's fun.
it's interesting because I have multiple examples from this week about how different things go differently for talks. I think I had one, like the retreat that I led was the most free extemporaneous, like no planning that I've done in years. And then I gave a talk on Wednesday that was an apologetics talk that like I have to get the content right. So like I was
Right.
way more tied to my notes than like a normal talk. And then Friday I gave the talk at your parish. It was this diocesan Eucharistic middle school rally. All the Catholic schools from across the diocese came, and it was a follow-up to the Eucharistic Congress that happened this summer. It's a cool thing to have it like here close to home. 650 kids at your parish. It was awesome. And with that one, it was kind of like what you were saying that you do most often, which is I'm going to pull pieces from other talks that I've done to make sure that it fits this theme that they asked us to do. But it's all kind of stuff that I've done before. And I have another story of leaving my notes that, again, we'll save for a little bit later. But we're going to stick with this retreat here for just a second, because I was freed of this, like, you cannot look unprofessional. Like, literally being here is the most professional thing you could have done. So as we're doing the pieces, it's not like I'm reinventing the wheel completely. Like, I've run retreats before. This was my first retreat that I can remember in a long time that was just sixth graders. I've run a lot of junior high retreats, but this was just sixth graders.
That's a tough age.
It was a tough age, and it made me feel very old. This was all happening during my birthday week, and I was already feeling old that week. And then I realized, like, I had been saying for 24 hours. I told my wife, I'm going to lead the sixth grade retreat for Father Will's church. Like, they all know Father Will, they love Father Will. And then I get to the retreat, and I look out, and I'm like, wait, I own a sixth grader. I have one of those. There's just this rush of realization because it was a busy week. I had it's one of those things that but you haven't let it set in yet. Like, I knew for 24 hours you're going to do this sixth grade retreat. And then I got there, started talking to them, and I was like, just doing my introductions of kind of who I am after I got to know them a little bit through some games and that sort of thing. I'm like, well, I'm Taylor. I've been working I've been doing ministry with kids your age for about 13, 14 years. And then I was like, wait, I have a sixth grader, and I realized that I have at home the age of a youth that I have been ministering to my entire ministry career. Now their age, and I felt incredibly old. Like, I started ministering to this age when I was 21, 22, and now I'm 35. And here we are. I'm the old man. They were all saying, they would kind of laugh at some of my jokes that I was surprised that they laughed at. And I was like, how do you know what that is? And they were like, well, my dad's 35. They understand me. Yeah. There was this gap. Jokes. When I was 21 to 22, I understood the lingo of kids because I literally was that generation, right? I was still part of that generation block.
You didn't have to study hip language. Exactly. Now you're like, hey, tell me how you use that in a sentence again. I feel like I'm in fourth grade again. Use that word in a sentence. Right. Yeah. And
then Jesus yeeted his grace towards us. That one's from 8 years ago. That one's gone now. But there was this kind of time where I was completely didn't understand the lingo, and now I do again because I hear my son yelling it while he's playing video games the whole time. Yes. So it was just kind of funny having this realization. But so I did something similar to what I've done in the past, but something that was brand new, and I think it unlocked something for me. That now this thing that came from this unplanned retreat is now going to be part of something of my plans going forward. So I had them do two things when we first started. I gave kind of the initial talk, just what is a retreat? What do you want out of it? That sort of thing, right? So I had them write on one piece of paper. I was like, one piece of paper is only for you. It's just for you. And on that one piece of paper, I did the whole story of, who did people think Jesus was? A prophet, Elijah, John the Baptist, all this kind of stuff. And then he looks at the disciples and says, who do you say that I am? So I asked them that question. They were supposed to write that down. Who is Jesus to you? Who do you say that Jesus is? And I was like, write a few paragraphs. I was like, that was just for you. Keep it with you. That's just to help you pray over the next 3 days. And then I said, on the other sheet of paper, you're going to give that one to me. And on one side, you're going to answer the question, or you're going to write down any questions you have about faith, and we'll do a couple of Q&A sessions, and I'll answer these questions. So that's what they did on one sheet. And on the other side, I asked them, what do you want out of this retreat? What are you looking for out of this retreat? And those are all questions that I've asked before, but never all together and at the beginning of a retreat. So I literally took that sheet and I had their questions. We use those later for Q&A. That's the easy part. But after that first block of the morning, when we were about to go
You
to
knew
lunch,
what to talk about.
I literally read through their things and I started circling the common themes. The primary one was I want to get closer to God, which is just so sweet for these sixth graders for that to be their
Right.
number one thing. I want to know more about God and I want to get closer to God. Like, okay, like that's the primary goal of a retreat. Good job, you got it, right? The second one was we want to get to know each other better and spend time together. And it wasn't just the like we want to be here to hang out, but there was a lot of verbiage of like I want to get to know my classmates better. I want to learn more about them. So like there was some kind of quote unquote surface level of like, we just want to hang out, right? But like
Right.
there was this like, I don't know, it was like a pretty grown up thing to say. Like we want to learn more about each other with this time. Great.
Right.
And then the third one was we want to spend time out in nature. Again, that could be surface level. We want to play football and tetherball or whatever. But like these are city kids that came out to this country retreat center and it's beautiful. Now, it's late October and in Texas, so
90.
everything's dead and it's hot, but like it's beautiful. Like, I explained a little bit last week. We go on these hikes and you can just see for miles. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So guess what we did every single block? We did something for all three of those things. We did something outside, out in nature. We did something where they got to know each other better. And then we did something getting closer to God. So like the getting closer to God is the stuff that I have prepared and ready to go. That's the talks. That's the different styles of prayer that I typically lead on retreat. That's going to mass and confession and liturgy of the hours, all that stuff. Okay, great. I have that ready to go. Nature also kind of planned when I go out to Eagles Wings Retreat Center. We are going to go on a hike. At some point, y'all are going to have a bonfire and we're going to tell stories around that stuff's kind of built in. But something that I've never really done other than just like small groups and games. Okay, that could be said as, getting to know people or whatever. I did something that's going to sound very strange, but it was incredibly successful and I'm going to do it at every retreat from here on out. Because they said over and over again, we want to get to know each other better. I didn't call it this, but it's exactly what we did. We did speed dating for these sixth graders. Now they're sixth graders. They weren't on dates. It was everybody was mixed, guy, girl. It wasn't
There was no
speed
Tinder.
dating.
No, there wasn't Tinder swap left, swap right.
Exactly. But when I said speed dating and how you pictured that happening with, chairs facing each other and, someone in charge, in this case, me, going boop, and they would stand up and move to the next chair. Absolutely what we did. And they
hilarious.
loved it. I was asking.
Well, yeah, because they were moving. The boys probably loved it because they weren't sitting there listening to a talk and they were learning about each other. And it was safe. Like they didn't have to find someone, right? So there's always this anxiety, like, is anyone going to pick me? They just moved to the next person. So you eliminated some of that.
Yeah, and they loved it. And like, obviously you're typically sitting next to your friends and you kind of started with your friends and then you moved on to like literally you were across the room by the end of this. And so I started off there was a mixture between like silly questions, serious questions, and then like serious faith questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
it was like, what's your favorite class at school? What's one that I thought was fun? What's your favorite memory? What's your first memory? Your first memory, like as a child. So that was fun to kind of hear their stories sharing there. So like, essentially if you and I were playing, like I would answer the question, you would answer the question, and then a large bald man would go boop, and I'd get up and I would move. So, I started asking faith questions. It's like, what's your favorite? Siri's yelling at me.
Siri.
Sorry,
Siri's trying
Siri.
to answer.
You don't know the Lord. I apologize. You should listen to Forte Catholic podcast.
I said her name and my watch beeped too. Sorry about that.
That's funny. She was loud. I heard that through my headphones. So it was just really fun, and like it would have never happened if it wasn't just me responding to what the kids asked for. It was very fun.
I love that maybe we overthink it too much. Like we make it more about us instead of asking people, what do you hope to get out of this? What were your intentions when you came here? When it was advertised, what did you think you were going to get? And then to deliver that, I feel like meets people where they are. And because you rotated how you spoke to them and what you did, I mean, maybe the kids who didn't want to really know about other kids, but maybe they wanted to get to know Jesus, they still got that. So good strategy. Sometimes when we get uncomfortable or like when we're thrown into something and then we discover, oh, hey, that actually worked. Or God wanted me to grow in this way. And now I'm going to do this every time. Like, I have to think also that's providential, not just for Father Will and the people that were planning the retreat, but also for you and maybe even for the people that were there. Like, I really stretched and grew here. And that's the whole point of a retreat anyway.
Yeah. It was
So,
very, very fun. So on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, I drove home I left at 3:00. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, depending on how quickly I'm going and if the police care about how quickly I'm going. I've been pulled
they
over a
always
couple
care.
times. I've been pulled over a couple times on the way to and from Eagles Wings Retreat Center. I've just started charging people $150 more to cover my ticket.
Yes, yeah.
So Wednesday night, I had to come home because I was giving this apologetics talk for my parish. And this one happened to be part one of the Catholic versus Protestant. Like this is, what are some of the common Protestant pushbacks against Catholicism? And then what's the Catholic response to those criticisms or critiques? And typically Wednesday all day is my day to prepare because for this apologetics course, I've mentioned a couple times on the show in the last few weeks that we've been doing it. It's like, this is one of those things that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't have these talks just in the can and kind of perfected. Like you and I've talked about these talks that we've done a bunch of different times before. So the retreat, I'd say one or two new talks, but for the most part, it was talks that I've given before, or at least the whole pulling pieces thing, right? Friday was 100% pulling the pieces together. Wednesday, brand new talk. I've never given this talk before, so I have to think about the structure of the talk. How are we going to do this? How, what am I going to say? All this kind of stuff, right? So I get home around 5:30. The talk's at 7. And so I have been thinking about the talk for a week because that's typically how I do it. I think about it, ruminate on it, kind of get the structure of the talk in my head. And then on Wednesday, I go through and I get all the notes, primarily finding stuff from the catechism, finding stuff from the scriptures, finding stuff from, Catholic Answers or whatever. Well, I didn't have all day. I only had an hour and a half or so. So that is the most focused work I have done in years. Just crammed it into an hour and a half. The most freeing thing about it was that this was part one of 2. So anything that I missed, I can just follow up with on the following week. But I went, gave the talk. I think it actually went pretty well. I've actually gotten some good feedback on it. It's on YouTube and people are commenting back. I got great feedback from people in the parish. But that's just a lot. Leading a retreat, sleeping in a bed that's not mine Tuesday. So I drove to Austin Tuesday, drove back from Austin Wednesday. Thursday, drove back to Austin after the apologetics talk. I slept in my own bed. Drove there Wednesday. Thursday because I had to be at your parish at 7:45 in the morning, and I wasn't going to do a 2.5 hour drive to get there. So I slept at my cousin's house and went up and gave the talk. And it was I know these talks very well. So it's one of those ones that I don't really need my notes, except for there's these 2 parts in this talk where I'm literally walking through a scripture passage and I want to read those verbatim. But all the talking part I can do extemporaneously. So the first talk was to the girls. This was all junior high students, 650 in total. So I did my first talk to the girls. Do what?
I'd say 300 or so girls. Not intimidating at all.
Yeah, exactly. So it's me and all these girls, and including a few sisters, which was very nuts, which was very fun. So I'm giving the talk, and again I'm having this. I have this new realization that I got Tuesday that I'm working. I have one of you. I this is just so funny. So I kind of told them that. We played a game, and then I started giving the talk, and the most junior high girl thing ever happened. They essentially became a radio show soundboard where every time I would say something sweet or cute, literally on cue, every time I'd say something funny, they'd laugh on it sounded like a laugh track, not like a normal they would do the laugh track. And then I would say something shocking, they'd be they literally became the soundboard, which is cute for about 10 minutes. And then I'm okay, you gotta stop. And I said, look, we got to get through this. We're getting to the serious part. But here's the thing. you can't. I love that you're being the soundboard. This has been like, because we had just having so much fun for that 10 minutes or so. And I was like, here's what I'm going to do. You can't do it whenever you want to. But as we go through the talk, I'm going to say something and then I'll hold up my hand and then y'all can do the soundboard. And like, so essentially I literally have them like, I'm like the conductor of this talk.
That's
all of a sudden.
That's
And
fine.
it was so sweet. Ended up using two of the sisters as, examples in one of the stories. So much fun. So I had like the most junior high girl experience ever in that talk. So I go and I have lunch. This event was actually on my birthday. So I spent my birthday with 650 junior high kids. And because it was my birthday, I wanted to catch up with my two friends. So Chris Bartlett was there. Like I was helping him lead the event. He's the one that invited me. Thanks, buddy. And James Longoria is the youth minister at your parish. And he's one of my oldest friends. We grew up in the same hometown. And I wanted to hang out with him. And he was there. He had literally just gotten back from a 2-week trip to Spain with his bride, you and I were at his wedding together. That's kind of how you started on this podcast. So got to hang out with him. We talked ministry stuff in his office for about an hour, and then it was lunchtime. And I was like, Chris and I are going to go out to lunch for my birthday. Would you like to join us? So on my birthday, I got to be with two of my oldest friends who like I adore, but don't get to spend a ton of time with. We went to this awesome pizza place. We got to share the great things happening in our life, the struggles happening in our life. It was just awesome.
Did they take you to Pint House?
We went to 600 Degrees Pizza.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it took 600 minutes for our pizza to come out.
I could have told you that. Yeah, that's funny.
Well, we went to the Mexican restaurant down the, literally in the same.
Mama Betty's, yeah.
Yeah, we went there at 11:15. They were supposed to open at 11. And there was a sign outside that said, opening delayed because our kitchen's broken. So we didn't go there. That was our plan because we only had about an hour. I'm glad that you got
to spend time. You don't always get to spend time like that with people on your birthday. That's great, Taylor.
Yeah. It really was awesome. It really was awesome. Good. So I mentioned that I had the most junior high girl experience. Like it felt like I was one of them. I told them that I was a Taylor born in 1989. That endeared them to me very quickly. It's like, there's another one that they tend to like. There's also a Taylor born in 1989. So then I accidentally had the most junior high boy experience in the boys talk that afternoon. So the first talk we were in the PAC, the Parish Activity Center, like the place that I've given talks where you've heard me before at your parish. This other place I'd never been to before. It was the gym at the school. So it was hot. We're all sweaty. It just came from lunch. Like it's boys and it smells like junior high boys. And so it was all boys and a couple of priests and one very brave sister. I asked her, I was like, she came up, she was smiling through the whole thing. They sang me, like she was the one that started Happy Birthday for me. Like just so sweet. Like this sister got 300 boys to see, to sing me Happy Birthday. Very, very kind. But I asked her at the end, I was like, do you enjoy suffering? Like, why are you here and not with the girls? She's like, well, we only brought like the sisters from the first talk were her sisters. And like, they were the only adults that came. So she was the one, she was either very brave or they pulled straws on the way
She volunteered as tribute. Yeah,
exactly. So given the talk, it's all going very normally. And again, like it's one of those like half using notes, half really not. But then with about 15 minutes left, the microphone went out. And typically in my talks, I'm doing a mix of like being silly and then telling stories from scripture and how it applies to us now. Like that's kind of like my MO, right? Going back and forth.
That gym is known for terrible audio. I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Well, it was great for 30 minutes and then it completely turned off. Turned off. I'm holding this microphone. It completely turned off. And so I just start yelling. I go from Catholic speaker Taylor to Coach Taylor in a flip of a hat, just immediately.
Oh, Coach Taylor, that reminds me of Friday Night Lights. Sorry.
I know. That's who I am. That's absolutely who I've aspired to be ever since that show aired in 2009. Like that's essentially the life that I'm living. So I put on my coach voice and I start yelling and somebody starts fidgeting with the microphone. I'm like, Don't worry about it. It's
Stop.
fine. But they're
Yeah.
they're insistent. So they bring me back the microphone. They change the batteries because, everybody, that would be the thing that you thought happened. It was working perfectly. Now it's not. They change the batteries. It turns on. They hand it to me. And I'm like, it works for literally one word. It's like, huh? And then it goes out. And they're looking at me. They're like, you turned it off. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm a professional audio engineer. I didn't turn it off.
You're like, actually, I'm not the guy to tell you or for you to tell me how audio works.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
So I hand it back to them. They're like, you turned it off. I'm like, no, I didn't. And I was like, look, don't worry about it. We're causing a distraction. It's fine.
Right.
So I turn it to Coach Taylor. And essentially my talk goes from being silly and telling stories to like me yelling like I'm in the movie 300 about Jesus' love for them and his call for their life and like all of these things. I literally yell at them for 10 to 15 minutes. And I like at the end, at first they were like, whoa, this is very different than what we were getting. By the end, those kids would have run through a wall for me. And if I said the word Jesus, they would have gone, Haru, Haru, Haru. Like it became the most men's talk I've ever given. Like typically I don't do that. But like I literally had to yell because there's 250 dudes, 300 dudes in a gym. And I started talking about like when I was with the girls session, because I was talking about how like God wants us to be happy. And that's this weird thing that we don't think that that's true, especially as Catholics, because like Catholic equals suffering. And we're like, well, did God create us for heaven? Yes. What is heaven? Perfect happiness. What does Jesus want to share with us? Himself and the place that he's prepared for us. And like the whole Pope Benedict XVI quote, the happiness that you are seeking, the happiness that you have a right to enjoy has a face and a name, and that's Jesus of Nazareth. So I did the whole happiness thing, and I'm like, okay, then what about suffering? And for the girls, I told the story about my little baby daughter breaking her arm a year and a half ago, and just how that suffering brought us closer together. And I had tears in my eyes. Like they literally saw a father like crying, sharing this story about his daughter. And then I go to the men's session. And of course, what story do I tell? The story from 8 days before when my son broke his arm. And ironically enough, the priest who said the prayers of the sick the day before he was going into surgery was in the room. And I got to point at him and I got to tell the story. And then I told him, I was like, he was literally going in for surgery. They did prayers of the sick the night before, and he did not need surgery. Was it a miracle? Probably. I can't be for sure, but like it seems pretty miraculous to me, right? So I got to tell these two stories, and it was just very fun. And sister came up to me after, and she was like, that took a turn. And I'm like, yeah, it really did take a turn. So I know I've talked a lot, but it was just this fun story seeing these three events kind of come together, getting to use my varying different gifts, like comedy until the comedy's over, and then the yelling. It was just a very fun week.
I'm sorry I wasn't there.
I'm sorry you weren't there too.
You were minutes from my house, but anyway.
Yeah. I follow your Instagram. I believe you were in a different state for most of the week, and I guess you came back for Mums on Friday.
I was actually in the state, but I was practically out of the state. I was in the Panhandle. I was speaking to some women up there.
That's South Oklahoma.
And then I had a little medical procedure on Friday morning, but we had homecomings Friday night, and then the big LSU A&M game over the weekend. So yeah, I spent the vast majority of the last 3 weeks making homecoming mums. We did a big fundraiser for our high school. We have an event called Project Graduation. So it's an event that we have the night of graduation. And so mums are and garters are a big fundraiser for us. So over the course of 2 weeks, we made 104 garters and mums. Normal size garters and mums.
I follow your Instagram and I've seen you making them. I thought you were only making them for your kids and maybe some other kids you liked. You absolutely made some for kids you don't like if there was 104.
Well, and to be fair, we had about 20 volunteers who pitched in on those 2 Sundays, but we spent about 10 hours making garters and mums. And then in addition to that, I made my high school freshman his garter. So neither one of my kids had dates, but I still wanted them to have mums and garters. So I made his garter, and then I made my senior mum. And I didn't just make a mum, Taylor. I made a masterpiece. It was so much fun.
How many was tears one of the primary ingredients mixed into that mum?
A lot of prayers. You know what? Tears only because the YouTube tutorial videos on how to do the braids were not done by teachers. I was like, y'all need to take a tutorial on how to teach because this needs some work. But I finally figured it out and spent a decent amount of time on YouTube figuring out how to make these braids. I knew how to make a mum, but the braids were new, and so I got super fancy because it was her senior year, and I made her
Oh,
a Texas size shaped and also sized mum that went from like
Texas
that went from
size.
like shoulder to shoulder and weighed about 5 pounds.
You
So
wanted to
it
make
was
sure that everybody was dressed appropriately, and sometimes these homecoming dresses aren't. So you're like, I want to make a mum that covers everything just
that
in
covers.
case.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even use a ribbon because it was so heavy. I had to use an actual cloth lanyard because it was so heavy for her to hang around her neck. But oh man, it was a blast to do. And also the community building of us doing all those mums for all those other kids at the high school. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I mean, I love being creative and give me a hot glue gun and ribbon and I can do a lot of damage, but I really enjoyed the conversations that I had with those mamas. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was,
Yeah, it was
following
good.
through your Instagram, and I knew I was very impressed. Not surprised because it's not surprising seeing you do something like this, but I was very impressed, and I was seeing a lot of them. But I had no idea that you were making them for everybody else's kids too. That's very impressive.
Yeah,
Good
so
job.
when you think of it, so statistically speaking, 25% of the students at homecoming had a mum made by our committee.
Wow.
It's not nothing. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was fun.
So next year you're gonna become a racketeer and start making some profit off this. Yeah.
No, we doubled our fundraising goal and which was great because then that means that we get to do even better things for our kids and we no longer have to ask for some donations in some areas because now we have the funds to actually purchase that. So it was a win all around, great community. Kids got to wear these and have a blast at homecoming, even though the game ended tragically. We lost. It was terrible. But then the seniors get to be the beneficiaries of a really great evening the night that they graduate and feel loved by God. And so it truly, like if I had to find something that I needed to pour my heart into, I'm really happy that it was Mums and Garters. Because sometimes when you're doing things that are creative or things that you love, it takes your mind off other hard things in your life. And that was God's gift to me these last few weeks. So it was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of threw it in there, but like you're saying that you're doing all this service project on the day you had a procedure done. Like that's sacrifice. Good job, Mama.
I'm not a two percenter, as the Aggies say, but yeah. So we actually took photos the day before because I knew I was going to be at the hospital on Friday. But all is good. But yeah, it was a true labor of love, and I loved every second of it. So if you live in Central Texas and you need like a mom sensei, just DM me because I'll help you. In fact, I had friends who were like, I didn't know you did this. I was like, well, I don't really do it for a living, but I was like, man, if you call me, I have all the skills and all the materials. And just before the game on Friday night, my 10-year-old was like, Mom, are you going to make me a mom? And my husband looked at me and he goes, how are your pain meds? And I'm like, my pain meds are fine. And so in 20 minutes, I made her like a baby sized mom and it was super cute.
Oh,
So
that's so sweet.
I was like, I've done enough of these that surely I can do a 12-inch mom in 20 minutes. And I
I've
did.
I've become so proficient at this that I can make the last one while high on drugs.
Yes, it's exact. And it actually looked pretty good. So yeah,
See, it unlocked your creativity, right?
it did. I unlocked a new level in momhood and I was like, this is a new one for me. I've never
Man,
never been on pain meds on hydrocodone and made a mom that looked, wearable. So it was great.
did it still look good the next day when you recovered from the
It
drugs and you
does.
saw
Actually,
pictures?
it hasn't fallen apart. In fact, it's in my living room right
Wow,
now. It still looks good. Yeah, still
that's
together, still
incredible.
hot glued. I think it was because I had adult supervision with Mr. Whitaker. He's like, and you're operating machinery and a hot glue gun. How about you let me do that? And I was
Right,
like,
right, right.
okay. So
Look,
yeah,
I sewed this mum, and it's just your hand with some ribbons
right,
attached
completely
to
burned. Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah, it was great.
So with Father Anthony and I on last week's episode talked about a big Catholic superstition, and now in the last thing that I know you'd like to talk about, we're doing so no matter what. We're pushing through the superstition because the superstition being, we're about to talk about an Aggie football game in which they won, but we are recording this before the next weekend. So essentially, what I'm saying is we don't believe that talking about an Aggie victory will cause them to lose this Saturday, which, as you're listening to this, was this past Saturday. But the irony always is that even though we don't believe in superstition, if we talk positively, everyone listening to this will be like, those losers made the Aggies lose by talking about this. But all that aside, You went to the Texas A&M Aggie
Oh,
blackout game. Woo, baby! Even if you're not
man.
an Aggie fan, the blackout game, and I know like the next weekend. So as you're listening to this past weekend, the University of Tennessee did it too. Hype video for that is fire. I don't even care about the University of Tennessee, and I was like pumped, ready to go. Same way with the Aggies. You were there. How was the first ever Aggie blackout game?
It was prime Kyle Field. So that's the name of the stadium that we play. I will say I went in like, as, old Army, like, I'm not gonna wear black, I'm gonna wear maroon. And finally, a couple of days before, because I literally got rid of I have no black in my closet anymore. So I did a 911 text to my neighbors and I said, "Hey, does anybody have a black shirt I can wear?" And Scott had his and he's like, "Yeah, let's just go all in." So we did, and Taylor to see okay, so we had 108,000 people there. That's 1,000 less than the George Strait concert, to give you some context. So
Yeah, and,
108,000
and in
people.
that concert, you could sit on the field. You can't sit on the
Right,
field whenever they're
exactly.
playing a game.
So it was like everyone was crammed in. It was a night game, and so to see the stands, and what baffles my mind is that on Monday before the game, the football team comes out with, "Hey, we're wearing black unis," and they say, "Everybody wear black. It's going to be a blackout." And like a bunch of little lemmings, we show up, 5 days later on Saturday, and everybody's in black. I mean, I saw a handful of people in maroon, but everybody was in black. And then to see them with their white 12th man towels, I mean, the stadium, like you could feel it moving. And so it was night game. Huge game. Both of those teams were undefeated in SEC play, and so a lot was on the line. And I gotta tell you, the first couple quarters, I was like, "Yeah, this is probably gonna end badly," but at least we showed up and looked good and, like, showed everyone how amazing Kyle Field is. And then we made a QB change after the half, and I I top 3 game that I have seen the Aggies play. I mean, Taylor, my hands the next day were red from high-fiving people that I did not know, but
Right.
we were committed, and we're big. I mean, I'm a big football fan. Like, we don't just go and, like, get something to drink, and I chat with all my friends. Like, I was like, "No, I'm here to watch football. I understand the game, and, the more that you watch it, the more excited you get." And some of those calls were happening literally right in front of us. We had a this never happens, but we were in a box, so it felt super bougie, but we were out in the crowd, and we never left those seats. It was unbelievable. It was such a fabulous win, and what I was so proud of is that the world got to see a glimpse of how much we love our team. So even Taylor, if we'd walked into that game 3-2, we were 5-0, but 3-2 in conference play, and they had told us to wear black, we still would have done it, and it still would have been electric. So I love that we just continue to show up for them, and man, it was magical. It was just magical.
It like I've lived here for 10 years, but like I didn't go to the school. Like, like the irony is my primary team growing up, I was always more of a pro sports fan, but the irony growing up is all my family's from Baton Rouge. Like LSU was my team growing up, right? So I've always said since I lived here that like I'll root for the Aggies every week in every sport, except for the 1 week a year that they play LSU. But there was this little piece of me that when they decided to do the blackout, I was like, all right,
Mhm.
I'm kind of rooting for the Aggies now because the blackout games are just so cool. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's scary, especially at a place that is so tied to tradition, like Texas A&M. Like the tradition of these are all the things that we do, and all the traditions that are involved with the game, the night before, and all this kind of stuff, right? So doing something new, wearing all black jerseys and telling the stadium to all wear black, and especially like you were mentioning, when you're down 17-7.5 and look terrible, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look to like, we're going to do something special for this game. And if we're losing 17-7, that projection would mean we're probably going to lose 34-14 if the game would have just continued on the same trajectory that it was on.
Right.
And then you can never do blackout again, or you have to wait 4 years until all those kids have graduated and the adults
Right.
are too old to remember, like that's that sort of thing. You
Yeah.
can't do it again. But the fact that they did it, they won against a highly ranked team. The A&M moved into the top 10 for the first time in a very long time. Like special night. I thought it was really cool, even as an outsider. Very, very cool.
Well, and you'd think I love these silly young quarterbacks from opposing teams who say things like, well, and we know Kyle Field is loud, but it's not as loud as Death Valley. Or the Missouri QB that was like, oh, we've been listening to speakers. We know it's going to be loud, whatever. We're prepared. Or UCLA last year, the QB was like, oh, yeah, it's not that loud. I'm like, man, y'all, it's like pouring kerosene on a fire. Like, we walked in and basically everyone's mantra was, if you leave here with a voice, you did not do your job. And Scott and I both left. His voice was probably a little bit more gone than mine was, but I mean, when you have that sort of a challenge, and I don't know, I think with the introduction of Oklahoma and Texas into the conference this year, there was a reminder to Texas, who is our arch rival, to say, like, we are no longer the same school and the same team that left the Big 12 in 2013. We are a different place. And I think that primetime TV got to see that. And what I'm so proud of is that they got to see the very best of A&M. And last week or 2 weeks ago, when I guess when this airs, when they played Georgia and they lost and they reacted the way that they did. And I was like, and people got to see how you react. Like, no matter whether we were winning or losing, Taylor, at the end of the day, Aggie fans just don't act like that. And I was so proud to be a student there and to be a former student now and to see how we reacted and rallied around our team was just awesome. It was a spectacular evening in College Station.
I bet it was. I bet it was.
Yeah.
Well, good. All right, we're going to take a little break. I know we're 50 minutes in. Short break. We'll come back for a short little last segment, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. If you haven't yet, I invite you to check out our brand new apologetics series on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We are currently 5 sessions into our 8-week course on Catholic apologetics. So the first week was just an introduction to apologetics. What is it? And how do we best share the faith? We talked about the proofs of God's existence. The last 2 weeks, we've been talking about faith and science, and then common Protestant objections to Catholicism and how we can have conversations about those and the church's teaching on those topics. Those last 2 videos are doing pretty well on YouTube. They've got about 1,000 views between the 2 of them. So people are responding well to those. If you haven't checked them out yet, go check out those videos. Leave a like, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button. All that stuff helps us to continue to grow. Share it with some friends who you think might have some questions about the Catholic faith, whether they're Catholic now and wavering, or maybe some of your Protestant friends would enjoy that video as well. Maybe a good place for you guys to start a conversation. Not only do we have that apologetics series, we have our Catholic Foundation series, which is a 10-week introduction to Catholicism. We've got full-length episodes of this show. So much going on our YouTube channel. Go check it out. We put out this podcast once a week, but we're putting out YouTube videos almost every single day. Go check them out, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Enjoy the rest of today's show. Welcome back, Kathryn. I think today's topics were very fitting for our last little announcement here. So you have been on this show for 2 years. You started in December of 2022. It is currently, I guess as they're listening to this, November of 2024. And we have spent 2 years being on this show together, and you have an announcement to make.
Yeah, so this is my last show the last time with Taylor here on the podcast. I mean, I'm not going anywhere.
I need the junior high girls sound effect. Aww. Cry track.
Yeah, that wasn't an easy decision to make, but yeah, so today's the last one.
I'm so very sad. 2 primary reasons. One, you've become like a mom to this show, and kind of like a mom, or at least the conversations I have appreciated most are conversations about parenting. I feel like you have helped me, and I've heard from multiple listeners over the last 2 years how much you've helped other people who have, dealing with things that I haven't yet, teenagers, but also dealing with, like, you and I. You have talked a lot about raising teenagers and college kids, right? And then you've also helped me in my transition, like even more recently, to Chris being in junior high and helping with my little kids. So it has been very helpful to me and meaningful to me there. And so we talked about your parenting today and with the moms. We also talked about Aggie Football, which one of the other things that I very much appreciate is having a woman to talk sports with, because typically when I'm having a sports conversation, it's with another ugly dude. And I'm just like, yeah, bro, all this kind of stuff. But like having your perspective and how much diehard you are into it has been very fun for me. So you and I I just checked. This is either episode 25 or 26 that we've
Oh,
done together.
wow.
You have spent an entire day of your life on the air with me. I can see why you want to leave.
No, it's not personal. I mean, the reasons that I made it were personal, but it wasn't personal with you. I love getting the chance to have longer dialogues and talk about things that matter. And sometimes things in your personal life mean that you have to step back and step into things that God's calling you there. And so that's what I find myself having to do now. So I mean, I talk a lot. In fact, every time that I talk to people, I always tell them that our life is often a series of saying no to really good things. It's not when we say a hell yes to something, it's not because something's terrible for us or it's bad. There's a lot of good yeses out there, but we have to decide which yes God needs us to walk into. And I had to say no to this one, and it was hard, Taylor.
I remember the phone call when you said yes to being on the show. I had asked you, and you're like, "Can I think about this? Pray about it." A few days later, whatever it was, you called back, and you're like, "Taylor, I only say yes to things that it's a hell yes, and I say no whenever it's not a hell yes." So I'm not taking this as a hell no. I'm just taking it as a yes without hell. That's what I'm taking.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. I like that perspective. Yeah.
You've gotten the hell out of your life, including no longer doing the show. Congratulations. Less suffering in your life. But no, this has been really, really cool. And honestly, I was not shocked when you said it. Not because things have been bad, but because you had the same trajectory that multiple of my previous co-hosts and previous guests have had. You come onto this show and you do podcasting, and you're like, "This is easy, and I'm good at this." I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I asked you to do it." And then you're like, "I don't even need you anymore." That's essentially what
No.
and you did. You started on this show, and then you became a podcaster with Hand to Hole. You're doing a couple podcasts with them, and then you got the Sirius XM channel, and you're like, "Why am I still doing this gateway drug? I have the hard stuff now. What do I need this for?" The amount of people that have done that, I just see it coming now. So congratulations on your bigger and better things.
Well, they are fun. But yeah, we have some personal things going on with some of our family members that they just need more of me. And that's sometimes I think as your kids get older, we were saying I know we've talked about this before, is that when our kids were little and like I was learning like how to potty train my kids or how to get them to say yes to the blue cup and no to the red cup, you can share that publicly and get people's advice. And as your kids get older, the price tag gets bigger, but it also means that you find that you have more conversations offline with like real people in your life and you don't share that as much on social media. So I haven't been as transparent on social media about some of the things that we're working through in our own household. But trust me when I tell you that they need a lot of me, and it's something that I've been praying about for a long time of where does God need me to say yes and where does God need me to say no. And the same day that I contacted you, I had to reach out to someone else and say, "I can't. I can't do it anymore, and I'm getting ready to make another phone call." And those are never easy because at the time that I said yes, they were absolutely hell yeses, and I was all in. And then sometimes God's like, "And now I need you to step back into this." And so that's where I find myself, and I'm not sad about that in the sense that I was like, I'm grateful that I'm old enough and wise enough to not get so far in that I disappoint more people. Instead, I say, like, I have to walk away and do this and serve the people that I know God needs me to love well. So that's where I am. But I'm still gonna see you. It's not like I mean, hell, you're at my parish over the weekend, and I'm still gonna see you a lot. You're still editing my other podcast, which you do an amazing job with. I'm excited that those are gonna continue next year, but I did cut back some of my podcasting with them, so I'm not gonna be doing as many episodes, but still doing, good work with them, and so I love that I still get to work with you on a professional basis, and I still get to bug you. Like, if you need someone to come talk sports with,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know my just text me.
yeah.
Send me a DM, let's talk, so
Yeah, you have moved into the friendship level of where now we're primarily talking when you're paying me. That's where we're at now. So we'll talk whenever you pay me to edit your other podcasts. But not only is the Hand to Hold still going on, but your Sirius XM show is still rocking and rolling, and that's one of the primary ways that people can continue to support you and listen to you when they're leaving this. So
yeah, Thursdays at at 1 East, so noon Texas time every Thursday. And I think they're replaying it on Tuesdays at noon, or at least that's been the normal schedule, if there is a normal schedule. And so, yeah, if lunchtime, and you can always listen to it on the app on demand because our shows are once a week. I think they keep 4 weeks worth of shows, whereas normally they would only keep like 4 days of shows, but we're not a daily show. We're just a weekly show. And so Rachel, my co host, and I are having a lot of fun talking about college athletics. She's a Florida Gator fan. It's a rough year to be a Florida Gator
Right.
fan. And so we talk about that, but also things from a female perspective. And so I've really enjoyed those conversations. They've been very fruitful, and it's just enough time. Like I don't want to say never. I'm not in a space in my life where I could do a daily show, but this weekly gig is like the perfect amount of time that Rachel and I both have, because between the two of us, we have 12 kids. So this is a good sweet spot for us.
Right. That's great. Well, good. I am very, very grateful for the time that you have spent here on the show.
Thanks,
It's been great
Taylor.
getting to know you more. Like, it's one of those things that, before the show we knew of each other and that sort of thing. But it's been great to have you be this big a part of my life and part of the show. So thanks. It's been awesome.
Well, Taylor, I think that you're doing great work. I mean, I listen to you talking to bravely talking to middle school kids and all the work that you do in ministry. And I think it's noble and important. And I'm just grateful that I got the phone call to be here in the first place. So thank you.
Yeah, this was awesome. All right. Well, typically I say I'll be back next week. She'll be back in a month, but I'll be back next week and I'll convince her to come back in probably about 2 years for a week. Bye. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode. I'm so glad that you are here. I'm so grateful for Kathryn's time here on the show. I know we love her so much and we're going to miss her. So in the meantime, if you're looking for something else to watch, you can always go back and watch the full-length episodes of this show on our YouTube channel. You can listen to them in your podcast feed. Also on our YouTube channel, we have our Catholic Apologetics series that I mentioned during today's show. The talk that I gave with very little prep that I think went pretty well is up there now on the channel, including, by the time you're listening to this, part 2 will also be up there. So all kinds of stuff going on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. Leave a subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, hit the bell, all of those things. Thank you so much for watching, listening today. Enjoy your week. Love you.